It's Eve 2020. Today is May 26th. That is patch day. And I am Adderall. Let's go through some of these numbers. Tranquility, starting with PCU. Tranquility reached almost 40K. Dropped down to a low of about 19,724, it looked like. This is a picture of the last 36 hours. And your peak was nearly 39,000 players, 38,800. So that's good. One of the things I was concerned about, that slump of new players over the past week has ended. It looks like it's back to normal and thriving pretty well. So who knows what that was about, but it looks like to be gone. Let's take a peek at Serenity, just out of curiosity. Yeah, they're settling at about 26, 27,000 in the past week. Yeah, they're about 20,000 just a few hours ago. So their peak just ended. That is Serenity. This is Tranquility. Big difference, almost 39,000 there. Let's have a look at statistics. Looks like Lonetrek again, 33,175. The Forge, 2,598 ships destroyed in the last 24 hours. And in third place, Domain, 2,433. I think the reason for Domain and the Forge is that trade route that is predicted to be affected by incursions, which are live today. It's causing people to move things early. Of course, the gankers know that too, so I think they're out there and in full swing, trying to catch the early birds who are trying to get out from under whatever happens next in Nargia, the system. So let this be a warning to you. When something is announced, do not delay until a few days before it goes into effect to try to avoid it. By then, everyone that knows that you're trying to avoid something is going to figure out how you're going to avoid it, and they're going to be there waiting for you. So that means in this case, if the trade route from Jeddah to Amar is going to be disrupted, a lot of people are going to wait until 2 or 3 days before it happens to move all their stuff, and just to settle or to resettle or to move stuff into into Amar. Well, the gankers for the 4 or 5 days before it kicks in are going to be camping heavily because they're going to be wanting to catch as many people as possible. So that's happened in move fleets. It happens in when people are retreating. It happens anytime there's a change. Do not delay in trying to head it off. Make your adjustment as quickly as possible. Okay, in the last 24 hours, the regions in nullsec are Delve 835. That looks like a routine number. Those are ships destroyed in the last 24 hours. Kalevala Expanse, also a routine number, 840. And Fountain, more or less, routine number, 616 ships destroyed. Nothing standing out here with the most violent systems in the last 24 hours for nullsec is 1DQ, headquarters of Imperium, 7 TAC A and Detrid. That's a surprise. 201 ships destroyed there, 125 pods. And Catch has some action going on. It's the home of Brave Alliance. That's GE TAC 8JV. That had 187 ships destroyed, 72. Yes, we are doing patch notes today, right after statistics. Look at that. Look at that. Most violent systems in high sec. I told you, Nargia is under heavy camp right now. So look at that. 1,258 ships destroyed. A lot of those are gankers again, but those gankers are destroying their ships for a purpose, and that is to take out freighters that are moving stuff. And we'll check the big kills to see if anything crests over 5 billion ISK worth. We'll see if there are any freighters on there. I'm going to turn myself up a little bit. Make sure you guys can hear. There's a lot of interesting ones down here that are in Lonetrek. These are the new supply lines. I've heard that... Well, let's go to the map. Before we move on from statistics, there's a look at NPC kills in the last 24 hours. We'll change that over to ship and pod kills in the last 24 hours, and you can see that this route here is a little bit dangerous. And this is in Lonetrek, which neighbors the Forge. I'm going to zoom in so you can get a better idea. This map is a bit of a mess because this region has, it's just not depicted very well. Jita is here, right in the middle. See if I can come out with it highlighted. I don't think I can. I don't have a highlighting tool on here. And that spider web of connections will lead you to a system right below it called Sobieski or Sobaseki. Sobaseki is the first system in Lonetrek. It's also got a hub because it has a station with research capability and industry capability and refining, and so it was used as a kind of a hub for this region, and it was one jump away from Jita, so it could be supplied rather easily. And the reason for this, by the way, it's kind of interesting. You can't see regional prices. You can't see beyond your region's prices on the market. So somebody in Lonetrek can't see prices in Jita because Jita is in a different region. It's the Forge. But you can see prices in Sobaseki. So what people would do is supply Sobaseki since it's one jump away from Jita. And if you're anywhere in Lonetrek, when you do a search for items, you would see the prices set pretty much by Sobaseki. And that would allow you to go there and use it as a trade hub if you wanted to. Some people, by the time they get to Sobaseki, if they know it's just one more jump to Jita and the prices might be lower, they jump over and check. And if the prices are lower, then they usually just buy in Jita. But a lot of times, people will just go to Sobaseki. So that is connected, Sobaseki, to Isanamo, and that is connected to Yumisasian. I did my best with that one. Remember, Icelanders made this game. They switch vowels all the time. Anyway, there's this whole line here that goes left to right, and that is a new trade route. We can see it if we... I'm going to change the ship kills to jumps, so you can see the jumps. It'll be a lot clearer. Now you can see the red is the deeper the color, the deeper the traffic. So it goes from yellow to deep orange to red, and then it goes to Jita, which would basically be black because that's where everybody's headed. Oh, cool. So it says, Matterall, I work for FedEx, going to different city to city, and your presentation really helps beat the monotony of the job. Thanks. Also, people in Texas or Chicago don't use masks at all. I live in LA too. Hey, man, that's awesome. If this helps you, thank you, because you're doing some critical work, moving things around. I've been saying this a lot, but I was playing, I just finished playing it. It was called Death Stranding, where you're a delivery guy, and it was one of the most amazing video games I've ever played. I don't play video games. That's why I play EVE Online. But I played that one because I love that creator, Hideki, I think. Hideo? I forget his name. Anyway, he's amazing. He did Metal Gear Solid and all those kinds of things, and they have deep contemplations of death and violence and humanity and the struggle for survival, and he's just right on my level as far as things I'm interested in. Hideo Kojima, thank you. That guy, master video game maker, and he made Death Stranding, which is a masterpiece. It was like literally sci-fi movie. A lot of it was cutscenes, and it was still, for me, it was like a 90-hour experience, which I'm still having dreams about it. Super emotional, super terrifying, super some humor, some cuteness, a little bit of goofiness, and then just a terribly emotional storyline. So yeah, it's true. I don't play video games, but I do play EVE Online because it's a bit different. Okay, point is delivery. Very important, and I'm glad that you get something out of this. I'm glad to do it every day if it helps you out. Okay, so that's the new trade routes. It's like, for some of us players who have been here a while, can't really express enough how today's patch day is going to change some things for EVE Online that will never be the same. So yesterday was the last day without this invasion phase 3. So now we're in it. Today is patch day. Going forward, you're going to start to see a disintegration of Empire space in certain systems if things go as predicted, which they may not, because we're not exactly sure how CCP has set this up. Let's go to kill boards. Oh, wow, right off the bat, looks like Test lost an Occator, or Occator. This is a hauling ship. I think it's the... Oh, it's a deep space transport. So it is a hauling ship. It's just a T2 version. And this sucker was carrying some stuff because it went for 16 billion ISK worth of cargo, it looks like. The ship itself is not very expensive, but yeah, this was carrying 16.6 billion worth of cargo. Looks like a variation of things. A lot of quantities of, well, it looks like it was coming into HiSec, so it was carrying a lot of stuff that looks like loot. So it was going to the market to try to unload this stuff. It got unloaded just a bit early. Hey, Hateless, come in here, dude. You guys know Hateless Gaming is a master of missioning. So, yes, we are going to go over patch notes in a bit. I'm just going over statistics. And I don't know, I did look over the patch notes. From what I understand, it's everything that we've kind of covered before. We don't know how it's going to work yet, but... Oh, he knows nothing about the new patch. Okay, Hateless, you're off the hook. We're going to cover patch notes. Stick with us. It's going to be just a few minutes of this. In Genesis, an Asbel goes down that belonged to Bird Industry. That's Malma, the system. Jita Holding Company is responsible for taking that out. In Lonetrek, we were talking about Lonetrek earlier, we have an Anshar that went down in Pokenen. And that went down for a total of 14.3 billion. That's about 5 billion worth of cargo because that ship's worth about 9 to 11. And a Sotio looks like a Blood Raiders. Sotio went down to Northern Coalition. Looks like Cubby picked it up. And that went down in Detroit of all places. That is not where NC. Lives. So they were on deployment and took that out, or at least won the day with it. Maybe it was whittled down by somebody else. There might be a story there. That's an NPC station, by the way. Blood Raiders aren't players, so when that station blows up, it drops loot. The loot is rare blueprints that turn into very expensive ships. Also in Providence, in TU TAC 00T, a Fortizar belonging to Forbidden Authority has gone down to Now You're Gone. Let's have a look at that, because right now Providence is just going crazy. This is not necessarily an expensive Fortizar, but a Fortizar going down in general. It looks like it's taken out by Provi block. So this was an illegal... Yeah, Forbidden Authority wasn't supposed to be there, so Provi block is cleaning their area. And we also have, and that's it actually. All the other ones were covered yesterday. Okay, let's go to Timerboard real quick. Esoteria. Ooh, Test Alliance has four iHubs coming out. are probably not a real threat to them. But if it is, it would be news to me. They have the big ones here would probably be Veil of the Silent. Reverberation Project has some stuff coming out in less than 12 hours. So Reverberation Project looked at their iHubs. They are going vulnerable in VTAC N, that's in Veil, and iPay in Veil. That's a popular system. Also, you have a different iHub 7TAC UH in Federated Alliance of Mafias that belongs to them. Okay, a bunch of news here. Let's go through this. So that's the statistics. Today, again, is patch day. Let's look at that. We're not going to cover it just yet. I'm going to teach you guys a little bit longer, but Chapter 3, Invasions Chapter 3 is in now. We'll be right back because we have smaller things that we want to cover, or we could save these till the end of the day. Actually, let's just go through these real quick. The Friendship Machine yesterday showed... the Friendship Machine this Wednesday, which is tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. 1900, you're going to see Hilmar and CCP Ghost. And they're going to be talking about discuss the EVE Online Friendship Machine and real-life learnings that can be taken from EVE Online. If you followed the presentations they've been giving, there are two facets to playing this game, which is why it sometimes isn't considered a video game as much as a simulator for life. And one is that you can create conditions that create friendships, and two, you also create conditions that create industriousness and skills that you would use for an actual profession. And you also have a live economy that, I guess according to Hilmar, you can have the totality of control over, and therefore you can use it to predict models in real life because the economy will work a certain way. And it works in EVE pretty much the same way it works in real life. Different scale, different issues, but much more predictable. So check that out. That's tomorrow. We'll talk about it on tomorrow's morning show too. Next thing is rubles are in the news because CCP is raising the prices, I think practically to double for Russian players or players that pay in rubles. And this is something they've wanted to do, I think, for a long time. I've heard that it was mentioned in the investor phone call for Pearl Abyss, who now owns CCP, as something, maybe a little note, and then maybe someone at CCP saw that or heard that and took note. It's unlikely that Pearl Abyss told CCP to raise the price on rubles, but CCP may have looked at it and said, there's a lot of good reasons to do this one as it hasn't been done in a while. I think the ruble has deflated pretty hard against international currencies, I think, and that makes it really cheap to play EVE Online and to buy Plex for EVE Online, so they needed to fix that. So the prices will be going up. They're not up yet, but on July 1st, coming soon, that will be there will be a new price point for paying for EVE Online with rubles, and it will be higher. If you look at third-party retailers for EVE Online, there is a Russian retailer, Gamezar. I think that's like Bazaar, I don't know. And if you look at that for Plex, these are the prices that will probably change too. So July 1st, these will probably go up. Right now, if you have a credit card that doesn't have any, foreign exchange conversion fees, it would probably be cheaper to buy Plex through this market. But that will change as of July 1st. This also hurts, and this is one of the reasons they're probably doing it, is I think they write as much. Let me get back to that it probably hurts. Let's see, the main reason for the update is that the change in currency conversion over the last few years has created an imbalance between pricing in rubles compared with the rest of the world. In other words, ruble price has gone down, and since it's linked to Plex and it hasn't changed, then rubles still have can still have the same buying power against Plex, which Plex's buying power against other economies has changed. Therefore, you can basically buy use depreciated rubles to pay for Plex, and you're getting off paying less for EVE Online. This has resulted in the abuse of current price differences, which I may have just pointed out, which has had a negative impact both in-game and out of game. Now, I think what they're saying there is, this is hard to unravel, but it could lend to like RMT or black market or gray market reasons to sell EVE Online stuff. Maybe I shouldn't go into it because I don't understand it very well, but we'll have to unpack it in a proper way. But essentially, if rubles aren't worth very much in real life, then it makes more sense to farm gold, let's call it, in a video game, right? Because it actually is more worth it. Like if your let's put it in US terms, if your $1 is worth 50 cents, but if Plex against that dollar is still worth $1, then you're going to spend the time trying to make money using EVE Online as a place to generate the income. It makes more sense, not less sense, to do that. I think that's how it works. Not that you can sell Plex easily because that's RMT and it's illegal. You're not supposed to do that. But the incentive is still there because it's strong. But I don't know. We'll see how that works. One of the fears of online currency is laundering money. So if you have money, you move it through a virtual environment, whether it be this game or a different game or even cyber currency or whatever. You're basically moving money through an area that's very hard to track, and you're washing it, and then you're extracting it in a clean way somewhere else. So that's one of the fears that these virtual environments have when currency is attached to their in-game virtual currency. It's a way of deceiving or covering up your tracks. So the point is, prices will go up for Russian players. How does this affect them? They're going to end up having to pay more to play EVE Online, and probably I've seen some stuff on Reddit nearly twice as much as they pay now. That
it doesn't even have to be directly linked to RMT, even though it is affected. But if you look back between the euro when it was implemented, €1 at one point was worth $2. So if you look at EVE, subscription fee was both the same amount in euros and in dollars. So if you were in a European country and you would have the option to select to pay it in US dollars, you would actually only be paying half of the price minus any exchange rates if you go for the dollars instead of going with the euro.
Right. So they're fixing that. So that was a big story that will come in July 1st, especially big for people who pay with rubles. Okay, another story is CCP did interviews. I think we have that page up. Let's grab it. Here it is. We'll turn the volume off. And as you can see, CCP was doing interviews with CSM members. You might want to check that out. That video, I'll put it in chat just now. And you can see some of the CSM candidates that were there. You're seeing January Valentine there. And That's Lee Ham's The Wildebeest. So anyway, check that out. You can see some interviews. We're still working out if we're going to do anything like this. And CCP's doing it, which is good. That's more official to get more views there. But we'll see. We may have a roundtable. It takes a lot to invite people. And again, we just have to decide if it's worth the concept. So, hey, thanks, Relos, for the Twitch sub. Haven't seen that in a while. Appreciate it. Okay, that is the statistics, and that is some of the headlines that are game news that you should probably know about. The big news today clearly is that it's the 26th. There's a few things coming in that are just have enormous consequence for you online. And let me just tick off a couple because you're going to need to prepare. You're going to need to have prepared already. If you haven't, you got to do something quick. That is, if you have a structure that doesn't have fuel, you want to put fuel in it, because if it runs out of fuel, you have 7 days to put fuel in it. So on July 2nd, if you haven't fueled up an old structure, it's going to become abandoned, and it will be able to be destroyed immediately and drop its loot. So don't let that happen to you. That's abandonment. It has started today. You have 7 days to put fuel in your structure. If you don't, it will become abandoned, destroyed, and drop loot, and you will be sorry. Many, many, many groups have already been taking down their structures that they intend not to fuel. That's what you've been seeing for the last 3 weeks, I think, since this was announced. And that is one of the reasons you're seeing Keepstars get blown up in freighters, because they're trying to remove them for different purposes. Yep, so that starts today. Make no mistake about it. The other part of this that most people are talking about is Invasion Chapter 3 is now live, as you can see. And we'll just read this real quick. The start of Invasion 3, the third and final installment in the year-long... Whoa, something fell. The third and final installment in the year-long Triglavian expansion is now live. As seismic events occur and continue to unfold over the coming weeks and months, Capsuleers will have an important decision to make as they choose between defending the empires of New Eden or siding with the mysterious Triglavian collective. These choices have a direct impact on how the story develops and will have lasting consequences in New Eden, ensuring that life in the cluster will never be the same again. There will be an open conflict between Edencom forces and the Triglavian across high and low sec security. So that's a new clue right there. It's not null sec, it's just high sec and low sec, which is Empire space, which makes sense. With Capsuleers no doubt being drawn into engagements with roaming fleets as well as each other, depending on the side they choose to fight for. As a result, Capsuleers will attain standings for Edencom and the Triglavian collective. New Eden will see new structures and defenses being created on all sides of the conflict as the situation develops, with Triglavians establishing infrastructure focused on attack and empires fortifying their stars against invasion. So will you, intrepid Capsuleers, remain allied to your chosen empires or risk everything and side with the unknown and potentially dangerous enemy? It's time to decide. So Empire space coming under attack. It looks like a different layer of picking an actual NPC faction to back. So it's kind of interesting how this layers over faction war, isn't it? Okay, let's go to the patch notes themselves. They're around here somewhere. Here they are. It's patch note time. Anybody read these? Let me turn myself down. In my channel here, have you guys, anybody read these?
I have.
Okay. Oh, one second.
Trying not to be the one to talk about it.
Biosphere says, by the way, Matterall, what are your thoughts on this invasion? I don't actually have thoughts on this invasion yet because it's too hard to. Well, I guess I have thoughts, but they're not fully developed. I would say that it's a long time in coming before you actually could pick a faction that would make an actual difference over a long period of time. And I think this is something they wanted for faction warfare. It looks like they've moved it over to this other sci-fi conflict instead, where all the empires versus aliens. And the idea is that you actually change the landscape of the map. They didn't want to do that for faction war for some reason. Instead, you would fight over systems that could trade back and forth, but the consequences weren't blockade-like consequences. They were just bonuses. So in faction war, if you took over a system, you got some bonuses out of that system for your team, and you could create momentum and take more systems. But the nature of that system didn't change. The structures in that system didn't go away. The access to that system wasn't broken. And that was something that, they thought, well, we should do this for faction warfare, make it more meaningful. Well, they didn't. Instead, they moved that kind of mechanic over to aliens invading the entire known galaxy. And so all empires will have to join forces to fight against these alien invaders that are actually changing the landscape. In other words, making systems harder to access. So flying through them would be much more dangerous. And structures in there, I believe, are going to become possibly more vulnerable. I don't know how the structure is going to work yet, but it will be harder to get to your own structure if you have one in there. So I don't know. I think my thoughts overall are it remains to be seen. It depends on how this feature or chain of features works. And will this change the game really, or is this more of a heightened faction war incursion mutation? It could be that this is the appetite is there from CCP to make this a real significant change. I think they want to do some major changes to EVE Online, and they finally feel like they've got enough data to make decisions that are a lot riskier. You saw that starting last year, and all year they've been making changes that have been shaking things up pretty hard. So we'll see. All right. I'll look for questions, but if you guys have some comments in here, go ahead, and the floor is open. I will agree with Hateless here. Hateless, by the way, you should watch his channel. He's a great EVE player. Amazing, kind of an artist at what he does. He's somebody who, to put it simply, runs missions and just knows everything there is to know about them. And he says, we don't know anything, in caps, which is true. At the moment, everything is speculation, which is also true, which is why it's hard to figure out how this is going to turn out. I can tell you some stuff. I know you're waiting for information like how should you adapt. And we would love to give you that information. We just don't know. It's too new. It's too mysterious. We've seen a lot of even after looking at these patch notes, we've seen a lot of the underpinnings of what is there. But it's like seeing a whole bunch of ingredients, but you still don't know what the chef is going to cook. But you know it's going to be a vegetarian dish because there's a ton of vegetables there, right? So we kind of have ideas, but we don't know how it's coming together. We also don't know what secret ingredients are going to add to make it all come together as well. So it's hard to give advice on how to move. The one thing that they have said, we just read it there, this is restricted to Empire space, low sec and high sec. Those all belong to empires. There is no Empire null sec. There is only faction null sec. So this is all Empire space where the invasion has been primarily happening anyway. It is low sec as well, which I think will turn If we understand this correctly, it's going to turn high security space that is taken over or blocked or attacked by Triglavians into low sec space. And if you are in a low sec system already, it will turn that to null sec space, which is no security. If that is the case, then you are able to fight in a low sec system like you can fight in nullsec, which means you can use bubbles, you can use bombs. There's no authority there to stop you from bombing, smart bombing near gates, doing a lot of things you couldn't normally do in a low sec system if it is compromised by Triglavians. And if you're in a high sec system, which is normally safe, and it turns to a low sec system, again, you can use different means of combat in that system that you normally couldn't. So in low sec, you could, I think you can attack openly without many repercussions from the authorities. So what may have been a safe system before can open you up for ambush. So it's going to be interesting. That alone is going to be interesting.
So let's just start with the early questions about the patch notes.
Yep.
Going over it, it seems most of it is related to changes in armor hardeners. There's been renaming. There's been some changes in how effective they are. So for people reading the patch notes, seeing, for example, faction hardness for armor going from -40 to -44%, that's a buff. That means that they will be the effect of the hardness will be stronger. Therefore, you'll need less of those modules to increase your resists. So don't be alarmed because you see a negative. Most of the faction modules are getting a buff. There's changes on some of the officer modules, some of the dead space. Some are improved, some are tuned down a little bit. Some names are changed, some fitting requirements, durations. It's mostly about changes in armor hardeners.
Yeah, this is, we went through this thoroughly. It's good that we're going through it again, and we should and we will. But you can also look back to a few days ago when Fonsway went through this, I keep wanting to say Skunkworks, but it was the other one. It's a website that shows you...
Hobo Leaks?
Thank you, Hobo Leaks. Yeah, we went through Hobo Leaks. And we went through all the actual stats that were on that. Now, the stats are they're not listed here, and we don't know if the Hobo Leak stats were real. Like, we just assume they are. But and normally they would be because they want to test on those stats. Except when it comes to market stats, then they obscure them pretty well, so you don't know exactly what the price point is for new things. But when it comes to stats, they want to test they want players to kind of test things, and so they put in the usual stats normally. So we did go through the actual stat numbers, but they're not listed here, so we don't know. Are they? Are they listed at the bottom? Yeah, okay, maybe they are here. But what we've heard is this is all the same adjustments that we talked about a few episodes ago, so look for that one. I forget what that's called at the moment. It's about a week ago or two. Anyway, continue. So you're saying that the real issue is the hardeners for armor.
No, not really an issue. That's where the majority of the changes seems to be at. Just going through the list, I'm not going to go into it in detail, just in broad strokes. They're changing the meta levels, so they're starting to integrate. If you look at the meta levels, you can get an indication on how strong one of those modules is. For example, you got some officer modules that might not be as strong as certain dead space modules. So now just looking at the meta alone can give you a decent indication of what's happening. Alternatively, they're making some changes in the volumes, the attributes. But the thing that stood out the most to me was that the faction hardeners are the ones that are getting a significant buff, where they go from 40% resist increase to 44 across the board.
Mm. All right.
And at the bottom, they're talking about a change to the Council Diplomatic Shuttle, which has a bit more hit points on hull, a little bit less on shield, a change on the shield and armor. Resist across the board signature radius has been reduced, and then at the bottom there's a bit of an explanation on what's happening with the abandoned states on upwell structures, and that the faction outposts or former outposts that are now just faction structures based on the different designs from Upwell, they will not go into that abandoned state. So that is definitely confirmed and now into the game.
Right.
I think we need to talk about the biggest change and the white elephant in the room here.
What's that?
They renamed the adaptive invuln field again
To
multi-phasic or plasmic or something shield hardener, which means no one is going to have any idea where they're supposed to get their adaptive invulns from. And I feel bad for all the FCs and logistics people that have all updated all of their fits and I have to go back and do it again.
Multi-spectrum shield hardener. It's funny you saying that, Bruce, because a couple of days ago I jumped on CC, which already had the update, and it took me a good 5 minutes to figure out that it wasn't called adaptive invulnerability field anymore.
Yeah, that's the name that's been around a long time.
So many years of that.
Yeah, so one more time they changed it to multi-spectrum shield hardener. It sounds a bit more scientific right now.
Well, I think it's. I think the name now means something, right? You're talking about multi-spectrum, which means all the spectrums.
And there is another module that also changed, the ECM module. Now it's called multispectral ECM. So yeah.
I think their naming convention is made to help new players conceptualize the module better. But for veteran players, Brisk's right. That's going to be it's like moving the undock button. Remember when they did that?
Oh, yeah.
It's going to take some adjusting, absolutely. Same as when they redesigned the NPC symbols to what we have currently with the frigates, cruisers, destroyers, and the lot.
What other big takeaways are there here? I like this, the diplomatic shuttle. I use a few of those. That just reshuffling that around. I don't know why they're balancing that.
That's a good question. I'm hoping that it's a prelude to getting rid of Nullification Interceptors. So that becomes a travel taxi ship. But I don't want to get my hopes up too high.
Well, the diplomatic shuttle doesn't have any. What do you call it?
Immunity.
It's not. One of the things that I had advocated for on CSM 13, and I know we've talked about before, was adding nullification to shuttles.
That's it.
And then taking it away from interceptors.
Nullification.
That way you can still move around and you can use them as taxis, but there's no combat ship capability that can, that doesn't have anything to turn, that you can get an insta warp out of. So, but I doubt that's what this is, because that'd be too cool.
Well, right. So nullification, for those who don't know, when you're in nullsec, you can have your propulsion turned off by bubbles that you run into. So that's what people will do, is they'll put a bubble around a gate, you pop into a system, and your warp is broken until you can fly out of that manually, and then you can warp after you get out of that radius. And in the meantime, you're destroyed by people who are gate camping. That's essentially gate camping. Certain ships were made to nullify that effect. First it was the Tengu, but it was a rare ship and it was hard to build. What's that?
All of the Tech 3s.
All the Tech 3 were nullified?
They had the covert thing that they could get on the interdiction.
Oh, okay. So it was just popularized on the Tengu, but it was all of them. I didn't know that.
It was a slippery Pete's, like that became the famous thing, but they could all do it.
So you could with a T3 ship, a T3 cruiser, get through bubbles. And then they allowed the interceptors to do it to create more gameplay. Therefore, interceptors could always break through gate camps and catch things and tackle them, and then the rest of the fleet could come and catch up. So it was a way of creating more conflict. Like, in other words, your grapplers could always get through to do a thing they needed to do, but people used that ability to get to different arms caches, so you could fly 10 systems over to a different area where you had dreads, and in a interceptor get into your dread and then fight. So I don't know if it worked, didn't work. I don't know if they're happy with it or not happy with it, but what Brisk is saying is, well, if you're going to have anything be able to fly through bubbles, it should be shuttles that can't do any damage or do anything. They're like sightseers, basically.
Exactly. It gives people the ability to move around in their space, use them for taxis, but it's not something that's combat capable. There should always be a little risk when you're moving around.
Should the shuttle get an increase in warp speed?
I'd be fine with that.
Well, I think you guys are playing towards the move soldiers around to equipment caches, which plays into groups that have large amounts of caches in different areas, which means empires can expand their influence because they can have stockpiles of armaments in further and further regions, and you're able to get them there safely without clone jumping, which is limited to once a day. I don't think that's what CCP had in mind when they nullified it for interceptors. I think they wanted interceptors to fly through defenses to catch something, and therefore to pin it down and call for DPS to come and destroy it if they could. I think that was the idea.
And I don't disagree with that. I think I'm less concerned with moving around to get to ship caches as I am with the idea that gate camps are a fundamental part of the game. They're a fundamental part of content. And when you pair an insta-warp ship with nullification, there's the only way you're ever going to get caught is if somebody's lucky enough to grab you with a smart bomb trap on a gate. And that means you have to pay slightly more attention than otherwise. And I'd like to see, gate camps to go back to being what they were able to do before, where you would catch, if somebody jumped in, it was a pretty good chance you would catch it, and the person that came in had to understand what they were doing and know, all right, I'm going to crash back the gate, or I can get out of here fast enough because I'm in a fast ship. There was a little bit of a skill required, and the nullification on the insta-warp ships, it's taken the skill away. But I think there still needs to be taxi. You still need to be able to move around, but I think allowing that kind of power and mobility on a ship that can also be really solid fast tackle and a really solid, combat eyes and things like that, because you can put a cloak on it, that type of thing. I just don't. I'd like to make it a little harder.
Billy, you were hemming and hawing.
It was?
Were you? Is that you? Is that somebody else? You're awfully quiet because you're still on CSM.
I just don't think that utilizing ship caches is not like this simple, it's easier to get to ship caches. This will expand the power of the empire. Da, da, da. It's like, nah, it doesn't work like that at all. Like, getting to ship caches is not like some simple thing. Setting them up is not some simple thing. Even handing them out is not some simple thing. It's like all of these things are extremely difficult, and they're already going to be done with Scepter. So any changes to this kind of stuff doesn't really change any of that.
Okay. Let's go on. I have to wrap up soon, but I can let you guys talk some more. So if you guys have anything else you guys think is significant, I'll let you guys take that and run with it.
Well, I can continue on this point because some of the guys in the chat seem to think that this is some kind of building a wall around nullsec thing, the idea of interceptors not having nullification. It's not. It has nothing to do with that. I mean, in the end, you can still get through gate camps with filaments. You can still get through with drifter wormholes. You can still get through with regular wormholes. There are plenty of ways to get around gate camps. And if you know what you're doing and you have enough guys, you can still bust through. So this isn't about protecting nullsec or protecting crabbers, because it doesn't. I mean, these days, you land an interceptor on a grid with a Rorqual, he's going to kill it. It's not like that's super heavy tackle, you know. And if you have a T3C, those things are going to get through, and they regardless of whether they have insta warp capability, they can cloak and they can move around. So if you know what you're doing, you can still get through a gate camp with a T3C that's nullified. So but that ship has a lot of trade-offs in order to get that nullification. So that's the thing. So this my whole take. It's not about protecting nullsec crabbers. I could give a rat's ass about nullsec crabbers. I want a little bit of risk, and to make sure that the folks that are in the game, that are playing the game, have a better chance at content. And there's nothing more annoying than sitting on a gate camp with your friends, having a good time, and watching ship after ship after ship that you can't catch run through there. It sucks. So make it a little more risky.
I think if you wanted more risk, you would
Please
want
don't.
interceptors to be able to get through. Like that seems more risk for.
I don't see that. I mean, it maybe it's risky for somebody, but it's not risky for the folks in the interceptor. You know,
Right, but is there like a significant black gate camp problem where ship after ship is getting through? Usually, I mean, I've had my uh, Jaguars caught before, and if you can ADC and hit to the gate, uh, that's the only way you can get past or get back and reset. But other than an interceptor, I don't really know another ship that could just moonwalk through a gate camp unless you like a Stratios or a T3.
if you know what you're doing and you've got a cloak, and you can do the MWD cloak thing, you can get out of almost any gate camp. Or at the very least, you can, if you're at a fast enough ship, you can get back to the gate and jump back through before you get blown up. So, I mean, there are ways around it. It's not a huge issue, but I'll tell you, it's frustrating when you're sitting there and folks are in uncatchable ships that the only way you can catch them is if you get lucky and they're not paying attention. You know, that's just too much
Or a
on
well-placed
side.
smart bomb.
That's what I mean. That the smart bomb camp is about the only way you're going to catch an instant warp interceptor, and even then, you know, you have to be in the right spot. They have to warp in at the exact right angle, which means they're being lazy and they're not using pings when they see newts in the system. So it comes down to luck. And I mean, granted, yeah, I've done it. I've gotten caught in them. I've caught people in them. But the chances are you're not going to get caught by one of those.
What about
I would be
explorers?
really
That came up. What about explorers?
What about them? They shouldn't have any risk. You can explore in a shuttle, right?
Not really.
If you're not actually doing exploring,
You can't mount
you're
any.
just going sightseeing. But I mean, look, I think in the end, it should be a little bit of risk when you're in space. And if you get caught on a gate camp, you get caught on a gate camp. There shouldn't be an easy, 100% foolproof way of getting out of it.
Well, it used to be. It was hard to get into a region because gate camps, right? Like you couldn't go into Imperium space because of gate camps. That was tough.
Yep.
And so you want to go back to those days.
I don't
would
think
like
we're
to
ever
go back to those days.
to those days. I don't think we can ever go back to those days.
Because of wormholes?
I don't think we
or-
can either, but anything we can move back towards that would make me happy. I know that I'm probably in a minority in that, but this is one of my pet issues.
Well, gate camps still happen in a certain border system down south. It's just that a lot of people don't gate camp anymore. There's as far as I know, there's only two real places that gate camps actually happen, and that would be catch, and somewhere in a fountain.
By the way, I think Brisk's point is that only shuttle would get nullification, not T3s or interceptors.
Well, I'm okay with T3s having it because it's a choice. It's something that you have to decide that you want to do, and in order to put that on there, you're making a pretty considerable impact on the tank and impact on your damage capability. Plus, the other thing is you can catch T3C. I mean, it's hard, but you can catch one. You almost can't catch a cloaky, or I shouldn't say cloaky, a nullified interceptor with that's insta warp. Plus, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure you can't get a T3C insta warp. Regardless, it's just I feel like that if you want to make a taxi ship, make a taxi ship, and that's what I think shuttles. That's the purpose for it. I mean, that seems to be like the main thing that you would use to move around would be grab a shuttle. You can't do any damage. You can carry a little bit of stuff, and that's it. Make that nullified, and then there you go. It solves a lot of problems.
You can get a T3C in a condition where it can begin warp and cloak at the same time, and by the time you attempt to decloak it, or bump into it, or anything like that, and you manage to get a lock, it'll already have been warped. If you consider that insta warp or not, I'm not too sure. I feel that an interceptor should keep its ability to, well, break through gate camp and interdiction, especially interdiction, being interdiction nullified, because it is the hunter. It's meant to break through certain bubbles protecting a system. It's meant to get through and slip in.
When I say insta warp, I'm thinking more along the lines of a sub 2 align time. So I don't think you can get a sub 2 align time on a T3C. I might be wrong. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've ever done that.
Sorry I've become quiet, but I need to share the room with my teacher wife who's teaching a class, so I need to be more quiet than usual. I can't go through the rest of the show notes or the patch notes point by point, but I did want to bring something up. Maybe, Rich, you can answer this. Maybe, I don't know. But Origin left Black Legion recently. Origin is a corporation that usually is run by Elo Knight and is Black Legion to a large extent. Did they join VOLTA? Did Origin join VOLTA?
As of current, it looks like they have.
Yeah, that's a big development. Is Elo Knight with them, or is it Origin, the corporation, without him?
I believe Elo Knight has returned. He returned quite a few weeks ago. But he hasn't been active in the last 2 or 3 weeks, according to Ezekiel. Billy, do you know more?
I'll just say this. So, Elo made some posts on Twitter a while ago. I would say let him play when he's going to play and let him not play.
As for VOLTA recruiting
Right.
Origin, I know that VOLTA has been trying to build a stronger US time zone, and they've been looking for groups that are, US time zone based and are willing to help them. So this is, an interesting development. I'm quite eager to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. And good point, Billy. We'll leave Elo Knight to play when he wants to play, not put any pressure on him. But that is a big deal. Origin moving to VOLTA if it happens.
It seems like it, has happened. Their alliance history says they joined VOLTA at 1000 hours today.
All right, breaking news. All right, what else we have on this user interface changes? Let's read through those real quick. Can anybody else read those?
And in fact, immediately after joining VOLTA, they managed to bring down the sizable fraternity Macarial fleet, along with Minakawa and other ships in
Sorry, having to mute in various places, Rich. I cut you off. User interface changes for patch notes. Anybody want to cover those? If not, we can wrap up. Okay, I'll take the dead air as a no. Patch notes, read them. We'll discuss them again tomorrow. Patch has hit today. It is patch day. And remember, don't abandon your structures. They will explode as early as June 2nd. June 2nd. They will be vulnerable to abandoned destruction. So watch out for that. Thank you guys for hanging out in here and watching. So if you want to hang out, it's TIS Discord. We will see you next time.
Awesome. I think it's hilarious. That makes me happy.